You want to hit the record button, Callum? Okay. Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of the Community and Corporate Overview Scrutiny Committee. Makes a change for me to say that. Before we start, might I remind everyone that this meeting is currently being broadcast live, so please do keep it to polite voices. Can I also remind that members turn off their mobile devices, Alexas, and other electronic devices that will sometimes cause a disturbance. Also, when members are not speaking, please do turn off their cameras and remain muted so that we can both save bandwidth and allow the presenters and those asking questions field of view. Other than that, just to go down members' attendance for this meeting, we have myself in the chair, Councillor Guy Grandison, we have Councillor Alison Swaddle, we have Officer Andrew Moulton, we have Officer Callum Wareham, we have Councillor Clive Jones, we have Councillor Graham Howe, we have Officer Neil Carr, we have Officer Nigel Bailey, we have Councillor Paul Fishwick, and we have Councillor Shirley Boyd. So, moving on to the actual agenda, apologies for absence. Callum?
Yes, Chairman. Apologies submitted from Councillor Emma Hobbs, and Councillor Abdul Lloyd will be slightly late this evening. Okay, no problem. Minutes of the previous meeting.
So we're going to go on to these. We've got basically, these were covering the meetings in November and December on the 23rd and 22nd respectively. So I will go through each minute at a time, and then we'll vote in for each minute item. So first things first, does anyone have any comments on agenda item 64, the minutes for the 23rd of November, going through this from page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, stop attacking me, cat, 10, 11, 12, and well, 13 is just the resolution. Does anyone have any comments or questions from those minutes?
No.
Can I ask that they be accepted? Please do use your hand function. Those in favour of accepting those minutes?
That's passed, Chairman.
Okay, that's passed. Does anyone wish to record their being against?
No, I'm in favour as well, but my hand function has vanished.
That's fine, Shirley. Just shout out.
Thank you.
Okay. Going on to the 22nd December. So page 5. Oh, Clive, you got your hand up already, or is that just?
Yes, it is. Yes, I have got. I just wanted to make a general comment. I think it was at the end of that meeting I asked that perhaps the minutes could be presented slightly differently, so that we saw which councillors were asking which questions, because sometimes you have a particular interest as a councillor and it's easy then for you to find it in the minutes. And you were going to have a word with Callum, and I guess that you've done that, and the two of you have decided not to make a change.
I think it's very much still in the it's in the minute taker's responsibility, because this is the importance, especially when we're looking at the budget aspect. This is the committee itself asking the questions, and basically building up the information in that regard. I mean, Callum, do you have anything further to add on that?
Not particularly. I don't know whether the thing is with minutes is they're not a verbatim record of what happened. They are just the key points. I'm happy for Neil to jump in here if he's got a particular.
And there's also, we've got an additional benefit nowadays in the fact that we do actually have the full recording as well. So everything is, well, until YouTube changes its mind, everything's up there on the online.
Yeah, but it is so much easier to see it in the written form when you've got your PC on than to have to sit there and listen and move on a few minutes, go back a few minutes and whatever. There is another point that I would like to make as well, in that I'm sure that sometimes people think that some of the councillors who are on these overview and scrutiny committee just complain and question and try to be difficult or whatever. And that's not the way that I try to be. I try to, if there is something that is good, then I do try to go out of my way to say it. And just generally, that doesn't get picked up in these minutes. And I think that actually it should, because it shows that there is support for quite a few things that are going on. And I think that is something that should really be recorded, especially when we're going through the budget. That our concerns should be recorded as concerns, and positive things should also be recorded. This is not.
It's a reasonable point. Neil, do you want to come in on that at all?
Because we are learning how to do this overview and scrutiny of the budget, aren't we? And
yeah, I think I'll let Neil come forward, and then I think I might have an idea at the end of this.
Just an observation, Chairman. As the meeting is going along, if members do wish for specific points to be included in the minutes, then if they want to make that point, then we can make sure that we do reflect that. And obviously, there's a chance once the draft minutes are published to actually make amendments and add things in at that point. So there were probably two ways to do this to get an accurate reflection of what Councillor Jones is talking about into the minutes. Yeah,
that's actually a very good idea, Neil, to take it that way. I think because we do get the draft minutes are generally circulated a week before they're published in general. I'm just trying to remember the last time I actually read the draft minutes, because it was I can't remember if it was before Christmas or after Christmas. It's a bit of a blur, that period.
I have to be honest, I don't often read the draft minutes.
Yeah,
because there just isn't enough
time in the day. I know the feeling. Right. However, considering one aspect that we would be talking about this evening is actually the our report back to council and the executive about the budget. Now that would be a very good place for individual councillors to basically make their, especially in the minutes this evening, what they thought of the process, what they liked, what they didn't like of the budget, and that should be basically reflected in our line items. So that's one thing that we should probably do tonight, especially for our record keeping.
Okay.
Anything else on this? Okay. No. So, does anyone else have any comments on the minutes? I was on page. So, anything page 16? Neil, your hand's still up, by the way. 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, which is definitely going to be a interesting topic going forward. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Paul.
Hello. Oh, hi, Guy. Yeah, page 26. Roughly in the centre, there's a statement there, and it states, relating to the housing and regeneration bids, the bid sheets contained a lack of detail. Now, I complained about those particular templates because they were totally blank apart from the title. And I'd like the word complete inserted before lack, so it reads a complete lack of detail.
The sheets contained a complete lack of detail. Sheets contain the English. My brain's not putting that. That doesn't make sense in the sense that the bid sheets contained a complete lack of detail. Complained a lack of detail.
Lack of sufficient detail.
Lack of sufficient detail would surely be a much more.
There was no other detail in there apart from
Yeah.
the title and the amount of the bid.
I think the correct English is sufficient.
Or were devoid of detail.
Devoid of detail. That's a nice word.
Yeah, I would go with devoid of detail.
I'm happy with devoid of detail. That particular. I remember. I think you took my question on that one, Paul, because I was going to be having a go at that one. I remember. I've still got all the notes from last time.
I remember me having a bit of a moan about those particular two.
Yeah.
The bottom of the sheet, and I thought there were two completely. Well, I thought there were two templates.
Yeah,
the
bid sheets contained a lack of detail. The bid sheets were devoid of detail.
Yeah, devoid of detail. I'm happy for that to go in. Hopefully the committee will agree with me on that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that particular item. Does anyone have any objections to that? I'm accepting silence as acquiescence. So, Callum, can you make that slight change, please?
Yep, no problem.
Alison?
In the same section we've just been looking at, the last bullet point where it was noted that the service was very proud of all workers. I think in the meeting, we added our praise to that. So perhaps this sort of reflects what Clive was saying, that the minutes could show, more of the positive praise that we do give.
Yeah, I think it would be worthwhile. It was noted the service was proud of it. I can't remember if it was right at the end of that item or if we did it.
Well, could it just simply say members felt the service was rightly proud of?
Yeah. So, can you put in an additional bullet point, Callum, of the committee? The committee was
agreed.
The committee agreed that the service was rightfully proud of all its workers who maintained the services during the pandemic, or something along those lines.
Yep, not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any objection to that? Accepting silence as acceptance. And finally, 27. Okay, silence. So could I ask that with those amendments that these minutes be recorded as a true record? Please raise your hand if you're in favour. And Shirley, shout if you've still got a problem with your hand.
Yes, please. My hand is up. Metaphorically, it's up.
I believe that's carried, Callum.
It is, yes.
Okay, thank you. Try the triple dots if you can see that, Shirley.
Yeah, I'm on the triple dots, and normally that's where it is, but today the raised hand is just not there at all.
Bizarre.
It's very strange.
Paul, is your hand stuck up or? Okay. Right. So thank you for that. I still need to arrange things. Callum, let's me and you have a chat tomorrow about signing these things. Okay. So first one is item number 6. Sorry, I'm crazy. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? Silence. Was there any public questions submitted, Callum?
None received, Chair.
Were there any member questions submitted, Callum?
None received.
Okay, so now we go on to item 6. Oh, Alison, your hand just shot up.
Yeah, on page 27 in our resolutions, 2, 3 and 4, we're sort of asking that answers be provided. Are those going to be provided at this meeting?
Can I jump in here, Alison?
Go for it,
yes,
Callum.
Please.
Yep. So I believe I have got an answer for the children's services. No, sorry, the number of agency staff receiving the children's services, but I'm waiting to hear back on the others from the adult social care team. So I'm chasing those. As soon as I get them, I will circulate them to members.
And I did receive a reply from Ulla Curran on that topic as well, because it was me who asked about the agency staff, so she did reply to me directly.
Could you do us a favour, Shirley, and forward that to members? Because I don't recall seeing it.
I can do that, yes.
Or if you want to forward that to me, Shirley, if that's easier, up to you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I'll track it down and do that later.
Much appreciated, Shirley.
Okay, thank you, Callum. Thank you, Shirley.
Okay, so moving back on item 68, I believe you're taking this, Nigel, with the burial capacity update.
I am, yes, thanks. Thanks, guys. Yes, this is just a report back as requested, just to update you on the burial capacity. I brought reports, I think, a couple of times last year just on this. Just a bit of background, those are just to bring you up to speed if you can't remember. It covers basically capacity across the borough in terms of burials, but also looks specifically at our own 2 cemeteries at Shinfield and San Sebastian's. When we came back in March last year, we sort of updated to say there were about 200 vacant plots across our 2 cemeteries, with a further 500 probably across the other cemeteries and 20 other cemeteries across the borough. And some of those are in ownership of town councils, such as the Mays Lane More Lily Town Council. Others are with the dioceses as well, linked to churches. Bit of background as well, if you remember, we talked about that 80% of sort of the average 80% of cremations these days with 20% burials. It's interesting over the last years during COVID, we've probably seen a move towards more cremations than burials, and certainly have seen fewer cremations, fewer burials rather coming through to across the board. Also, bear in mind as well, I think one of the big concerns, understandably, from ourselves and from the committee was around the potential excess deaths due to COVID. Now, obviously, as you're likely aware, we haven't seen significant numbers of excess deaths across Wokingham. So I think there was a feeling we obviously had a reducing number of reducing capacity. So part of the task was to try and increase that capacity across the borough. And again, just the final background, just as an update in terms of figures. In burials in our cemeteries, we had 21 in 2019 and 24 in 2020. So not much change really from one year to the next. And overall per year, probably about 50 or 60 across the borough in all the cemeteries across the borough. Since the last update, works have been carried out to both Shinfield and San Sebastian's. Shinfield was to create 30 or 40 new specialist Muslim burial plots at Shinfield, so those were done back in the early summer last year, and then over the sort of the autumn and winter, major works carried out to the outside of the San Sebastian's burial to create up to 350 new burial plots there, and some of the final finishing off works have just been carried out at the moment, and what that'll create as well as those additional plots, hopefully a new strewing area for ashes, but also we've been able to provide a new Baha'i burial site spot as well for a specific need that we'd identified coming through to ourselves. So hopefully we'll provide a bit more specialist burials going forward. We then updated the survey across all the other 20 cemeteries, and came up with around about with those additional ones from San Sebastian's and also from the 450 that remain across the other sites, around about 1,000 plots, which if we're looking at 50 or 60 per year, probably gives us a capacity of between 17 and 20 years on burial capacity. What this doesn't include, and I'm sure Clive may want to add to this, is the work that's being moved forward by Early Town Council around the Mays Lane and potential extensions to Mays Lane to provide a significant number of additional plots as well, which will make a massive difference to the overall numbers and capacity across the borough. And then the final part of the report was just to give a very brief update on the work towards the new crematorium, proposals on that. At the moment, it's out towards a market appraisal, which we hope to have by February. And I would probably suggest that the committee themselves may want us to come back at some point in the next few months just to look at that in a bit more detail potentially. I'm happy to do that, obviously, but at the moment, it's very much looking at what the USP is for that, looking very much an eco crematorium, where the right location is, getting to reappraise it in the light of COVID and the light of potential changes, whether or not we need to look at anything different. But what they'll also look at, as well as the crematorium potential, may look at additional burial capacity, maybe looking at some woodland burials, depending on what looks both viable and also is able to get an income stream coming back into the council. That's a very quick run through, and obviously happy to take any questions that you may have.
I've got a couple, so put your hands up if you want to ask questions. I'm going to go with who popped up first on my screen. So Paul, go ahead first.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. Thank you, Nigel, for the summary. Just a couple of questions from me. First one's really more of a clarification. Page 29, it states currently Shinfield has 150 plots available and 30 plus Muslim plots, and St Sebastian's now has 350 new plots, plus the vacant 50 plots identified in March 2020. So the total for both those sites is circa 580, but on page 31 it mentions 500 plots. I assume from your summary you've just given to us it is 580 and not 500.
I see you presume right, Paul. It's probably my appalling despite maths degree. It's probably my inability to add up properly. So apologies about that. Yeah.
I didn't think you'd say that. I thought you'd just say, yes, I did mean 580.
No, apologies about that. Yeah.
Okay, so on page 31, you mentioned about the new eco-friendly crematorium. How will this be eco-friendly when cremations create harmful nitrogen oxide gas, especially when burning chipboard and MDF, and 95% of coffins are currently made of that type of material?
And I think that's part of the work that's being done at the appraisal to see how we can, if we're aiming for this and trying to have a USP, that'll be part of the work to be looked at. It's very much about the, it's not gas fired, it will be electric led in terms of actually the main burners. That's the intention at the moment. There is other work as part of the appraisal around what else could be done to make it greener, because I completely take your point, Paul. Actually, it's not just about the burner, it's about the other things that go alongside it. I have to admit at the moment I'm not close enough to that to be able to give you that information. As I said, I'm more than happy to come back when we have that appraisal, and maybe that's something the committee would want to look into and ask a few more questions on going forward.
It would be very useful, Chair, if that could be in an update for
Yes.
Nigel in the future.
Yes, it would. It also, just as a personal point of note here, my grandmother was cremated in the summer in a hawthorn wicker coffin, which is becoming more and more common, which is significantly more eco-friendly than the traditional, MDF with match of the day stamped all over it like my grandfather was.
And certainly talking to, obviously one of the discussions we're having is a lot with getting some feedback from funeral directors at the moment about what demand is coming through their door as well. And I think just picking up Guy's point, I think that's where we're seeing, I mentioned before about the woodland burials, but we're also seeing more picking up those cardboard, picking up the wicker caskets as well. But that completely take your point, Paul. It's something we just need to look at. If we're going to do this properly and have a proper USP that's going to pull people in from a distance away, then we need to make sure it really is hitting all the marks on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nigel.
Thanks, Paul. Shirley was next.
Thank you, Guy. My hand is working again now. On the bottom of page 30, we are also reviewing the provision of a number of additional burial vaults. Yes. To meet demand from the GRT community, and I was just a bit interested in what those vaults were exactly. Are they sort of little buildings with shelves in?
I mean, they're obviously family vaults, and we have quite a few of them at San Sebastian's already. So they are stone built. They're not high. They're probably around about waist height maybe.
Okay.
And certainly there is a demand, and San Sebastian's having a fairly large GRT community nearby, and they very much have used the San Sebastian's for many of their burials, and we're getting quite a lot of requests from families in particular to actually have new vaults there. They do take up quite a significant amount of space, but I think we probably are able to accommodate those for newer families whose vaults are currently full. The family vaults are currently full, so we'll be looking at that as well.
So on average, how many deceased people can fit in these vaults?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I'm afraid, Shirley, I really don't know.
Okay. I was just intrigued when I read that, because that's not something I, even thought about. People still had vaults apart from the landed gentry, these days.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to think how many we have currently down at San Sebastian's. We've certainly had a couple of burials this year into family vaults.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
The more you know. Clive and then Alison.
Thank you, Guy. Your numbers, Nigel, for early, I think, are correct. 400 new burial plots and 1,400 for cremated remains, and we do hope to start on the project in the next couple of months. So I think that the town clerk is going to be contacting you for a bit of advice. So because we would like to have the work completed by the end of this year. Can you tell us where we're looking for extra woodland burial sites?
I think the view is that actually if we create I think as part of the new crematorium is the intention, probably we'll be looking at creating an area linked to that crematorium as and wherever it goes, with some to have a woodland area in there if we're able to do that. So it's not a new site elsewhere, it's potentially sort of having that as part of the new crematorium.
All right, and the new crematorium is on land that we already own, isn't it, as a borough?
It's not decided where it's going to be yet, Clive.
It's not.
And I think that's part of why we've asked for the revisiting the appraisal, because I think the location is crucial in terms of attracting sufficient, easy access, attracting sufficient, from the market around us. There's obviously we have Bracknell crematorium as well, relatively close by, and there is, which we are aware, they've opened a second chapel there relatively recently. So a bit of work just to understand how that's going. Obviously, if we have that ours too close to that, it'd have to be significant USP to be able to pull people away from there, which is part of the reason for obviously looking for the UCO one and potentially looking where's the best location across the borough. And again, that'll be something in the report that comes back that we're happy to sort of bring back and discuss.
Yeah. Do you know when that might be? When
we're looking for that report back, I would hope at the beginning of February. I need to be honest with you, I think that then obviously just needs to go to the lead member for discussion. And then as and when obviously that's able to go, we need to go through the process. If it's on WBC land, for that approval to that land to be designated for this approach. But we're expecting it relatively soon. That appraisal back.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Alison, and there's me.
Oh, hello, Nigel. I just wanted to ask about Jewish burials, and where our Jewish residents are able to bury their deceased family members. Not just obviously probably not in Wokingham, but in Berkshire.
I have to admit, Alison, I don't know, I'm afraid. I can certainly find out for you. It's not something that I have knowledge of particularly at the moment. It's certainly not something we have particularly coming through from specific demands for anything within Wokingham. But I'm happy to find out for you and come back to you, Alison, and let you know. Yeah,
because I was delighted to read on page 30 that you had a family from the I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Nigel, the Baha'i faith.
Baha'i faith, yeah.
And it was great to see that you did everything you could to make that possible for the family. And
I have to admit, we weren't aware that there was a particular there wasn't the opportunity within Wokingham until his family contacted us. And I think the advantage of San Sebastian's now now we have significant additional space, is that we are able to potentially identify some particular areas, particular other faiths, if they're willing to come into the same cemetery. I think that was one of the discussions with the family there. Normally they wouldn't be part of a wider cemetery, but they felt given there was another opportunity, they were happy with the location of it. It makes sense for them to actually just join in and have that area designated for that faith. But certainly, I'm happy to look at on the Jewish side and come back to Belson.
Yes, I think it would be good to be aware of it before we're presented with a family with the need, because I believe in the Jewish faith it's similar to Islam, that the bodies are buried as soon as possible. Thank you, Nigel.
Okay.
Lost my mouse. Yeah, thank you for this, Nigel. Some very good points in here. Now, I think the key factor is in regards to the cemetery, because the information that you're giving about 50 to 60 burials a year traditionally was the notes I dragged from the report.
Yeah.
Now that is corresponding. I don't know what the latest numbers are, but I seem to remember from 2015 when they updid the census half year update or whatever it was. that we had a death rate of about 1,200 roughly per year in Wokingham, about 1,700 births.
Right.
So under that 50 to 60 number, we've basically got about 5% of deaths in a year are asking for a burial. So we've actually we've reversed the situation that we had some, basically when we first started asking for these reports, where we had a perceived shortage of burials. It seems like the crematorium is definitely going to be needed, because 90 to 95% of our residents are currently asking for a cremation based on just those raw numbers that I was able to extrapolate from the research. Now it's very much more of a case of, with 480, we've basically got about 5 years of supply. With early additional, but early is a slightly different case, but we've actually got approaching a 10-year supply on that. Do we foresee that there is going to be a further trend away from burials due to the pandemic?
I really don't think I can answer that. I think that's part of what we're expecting to come back from the specialists that are looking at the crematorium in particular, as to whether I think it's probably too early to say in terms of trends, and I'm not even sure whether that trend is something that we're just seeing in Wokingham or whether it's happening more widely across the country. And we're expecting that hopefully we'll get a bit of feeling for that from the specialists when they come back with their report on the new crem. I think
when that is again.
Early February, we hope that will come back in early February. I think from the numbers that are coming through and the conversations we're having, I think we were expecting significantly higher numbers this year coming through. They haven't come through. We're not really at the moment. We're not close enough to be aware of really why that is. And speaking to colleagues across Berkshire, and sort of the death process management group, again, I think they're seeing the same about just the numbers seem to be more crematorium, just for the quick and relatively simple approach for crematorium rather than full burials, given that obviously they can't have the full groups coming along and the full family groups. But I couldn't tell you whether that's a trend that's going to continue, Guy, or not. I think the only thing that we are getting is the trend towards the different types of burials, the green burials as opposed to the crematoriums or the full burials. But
Okay.
we'll hopefully have some information in February.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to need to examine that when it comes through for the crematorium as well, because it's all going to come back together. Alison, did you have another question?
I was just going to come back and ask Nigel, surely during the pandemic and very limited attendance because people can't travel, crematoriums are all set up with webcams and live broadcasts, aren't they? Whereas if you're having a funeral and burial at your local church or in the cemetery, your friends and family can't take part. I don't think we're not going to adapt to setting up webcams in cemeteries, though. I don't presume.
It'd be a little more challenging.
Ours anyway. But that may be right, Alison. That may be one of the reasons why there's been a potential move towards cemeteries, cremations rather than burials. I couldn't tell you. I don't know the details of that. I think it's.
Well, in case of my grandmother's burial, it was broadcast to broadcast attendees were from Australia, the United States, Canada, France, the Benelux, Germany. Yeah, there were, and as well as just in the UK. So yeah, it is a good point. Clive, is your hand up as well? That's a no.
Sorry, I was muted as well. I was talking to myself saying, no, sorry, it shouldn't be up.
No problem at all. Okay. Nigel, well done. Well done on this. This is a much better position than we were in when you first came. What was it, 6-9 months ago? We've been in pandemic, so everything is blurred into a mess. Oh God, was it even pre-pandemic?
I think it was just. I think
it was February last year. On that regard, and you've done sterling work on this, in my opinion, because it's given us a much better understanding about where we are. It's given us a much better view about what the moves are going forward. It's brought things forward like the crematorium plan as well because of digging. And I think you yourself, and I think I speak for the committee, that you've done a sterling job on this, and that the concerns that we had last year are very much mitigated, and we have a plan for the future for this rather unnecessary, but of course a rather essential project, as it were. I think you've done sterling work here, and you have my full support in this regard. I think that sums it up. I think that sums it up in a nutshell. Paul?
Sorry, Chair, could we note that from the committee, actually, please? Have that minuted. Have that minuted, the point that we were talking about at the very beginning. Make sure these sort of things minuted.
Already made a note, Paul, thanks.
Thank you.
I would say that I think part of, just from the committee's point of view, because I think this, as I think I said when I first came, this had slightly fallen between many stools, I think, and until the committee asked for this, it certainly hadn't landed on my desk at all, I think, actually. So it was quite in a way, it was quite good for it to come through the committee to actually identify it as a potential issue.
Yeah, right now I'm sitting here and saying that this is a very good case of overview and scrutiny working correctly, because it's one of those pieces that it's a third rail, as it were. It's one of those pieces that no one wants to talk about and discuss in depth unless they absolutely have to. And we were reaching the point where we did need to, and we had the conversation, and it's resulted in actually something very good for the residents of the borough. So yeah, Nigel, well done once again.
Thank you.
So I think we've done that one. So we just need to note that report. So we're now moving on to item number 69.
Chairman, just before we move on, so do you want Nigel to come back? It probably won't be at this stage, Nigel. It probably won't be this municipal year. So before May, I think it might be tight. I know you're saying February, but unless
I wasn't saying February to come back, Callum. I was hoping you'd keep quiet, Callum. Actually, really.
So sometime next year. Well, next municipal year, as in after May.
Yeah.
If you're okay, if I sort of update through you, Callum, just to let you know when we've got the report and in the position where we can come back, and then that probably can go through and arrange with Guy when it's best to come back. Rather than give them a promise at the moment until we know where we are with it.
Yep.
Yeah, let's wait until we get that crematorium report, and then effectively we can then, once that's done, it's then a project that needs to be managed, and we can effectively put this topic to bed for a while until we need to pretend if there's anything wrong with the crematorium and investigate it in that manner. But yeah, once we got that crematorium report, we can go into that in detail, and effectively that means we've covered off burial and crematorium provision in the borough for the next X years. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you, Nigel. So moving on to item 69, which is the shared internal audit investigation, item 69. Who is taking that? Is that it's you, Andrew?
It's me, Chairman. Yes. Evening, members. If I could just give it a little bit of context to start with. So I understand sort of through you, Chairman, that this is the first shared service subject that your committee has considered. So a little bit of a trailblazer in that sense, and I just wanted to sort of stress the point that this is very much sort of an initial report tonight, and I'm really interested in the committee's feedback in terms of the model that you'd like to develop in terms of how you choose to scrutinise this example of a shared service that we've got, but perhaps even more importantly, sort of future scrutiny events in terms of existing shared services, but also potentially any new shared service proposals that were brought forward. So I just wanted to sort of make that point about the sort of the broader context to this before we delved into any sort of detail around the shared internal audit and investigation service. So just to sort of tell you what you've got in your pack there. So my actual report starts at page 33, but there are also two appendices. So the first appendix on page 37 is the original business case and indeed the executive report back in June 2019 when the decision was taken to create the shared service. And then in Appendix 2, there's an example of what I call one of the performance reports around the shared service, which is what gets reported through the audit committee. There's an annual report, but also a quarterly report through that audit committee. And that's just put forward tonight as an example of some of the performance reporting that happens. But as I say, I'm very keen to sort of hear your proposals and your ideas as a committee as to how you'd like to take forward any scrutiny of this in any more detail. But just to sort of say a little bit about the shared audit service itself. So it's been operating for 7 years now. We created this back in 2014. It's a shared service between ourselves and the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. I think it's probably fair to say that back at that time, in the sort of lead up to 2014, both councils had an in-house audit service. Both councils struggled with fundamentally some of the same issues of having very small specialist teams where recruitment, retention, broader resilience was an issue. And I would say in terms of drivers for why we look to enter into a shared service, the concepts of sort of resilience, the concepts of having a wider pool of skills in a larger audit team, and as well the principle of being able to share best practice across and between authorities. They were the real drivers that we had at the time. The driver wasn't particularly financial, I would say. We did make modest savings at the time of creating the shared service, but that wasn't really the rationale for doing this. In the business case, if I referred you to for example, to page 46, we set out there the strategic benefits that we were envisaging back in 2014. And this was very much a model that we envisaged at the time, that the original two partners would grow. We'd bring other partners in to the shared service over time, and really create a much broader service than we started off with. So we had some real sort of strong strategic ambitions around that. But as I say, sort of the focus, particularly in terms of the immediate drivers, was around those operational drivers of resilience, wider pool of skills, and best practice. But I'd be very keen to get any comments in terms of the business case itself and how useful or not, as the case may be, you find that as a scrutiny committee in terms of examples, particularly if as I say, the council were considering a future shared service type arrangement for any of its other services. In terms of growth, I just touched on that. What I would say is, whilst we haven't brought any partners into the service, we have been undertaking other work for other councils much more on a contractual basis. So 2 of our relative near neighbours, we provide regular audit and investigation work to them to top up on their existing arrangements. And we're always sort of looking for opportunities to expand that further should they present themselves. In terms of quality, so quality, as I say, was one of the drivers. There's an example in the report of the external assessments that the audit function goes through at least every 5 years. So our last one was back in 2018. And you can see there that there were some really positive comments in that external assessment in terms of how the service was around quality. In terms of performance itself, I'm very conscious in this report that you've got tonight, you've got nothing around financial performance. And I'm sure you'll want to see some metrics in due course around that, and very happy to sort of provide those to you to a future meeting should you find that useful. So I guess in terms of sort of introduction, Chairman, that was probably the sort of the key things that I wanted to say, but very happy to sort of take any questions, and in particular sort of take feedback in terms of what further information you'd like to see come back to a future meeting to help you develop that model, that good scrutiny model to look at shared services in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I think that was a very good introduction. I remember when I was chair of the audit committee, 2015-2016, that this came online, and one aspect that was always a question mark around this was when the external auditors were going to be assigned, because it used to be basically you were told from the audit commission, and now it's changed from back in the day. So things have come on and evolved since then. Members, if you've got questions, please put your hands up now. Now, Shirley, I did see your hand shoot up earlier. Did you want to ask a question?
Oh, no, it was just that there was a lot of background noise, and I was trying to attract your attention because I was struggling to hear Andrew because there was a lot of crashing around from Clive's department. Sorry, Clive.
Yeah, apologies. I didn't realise that's what you were doing, but your message came through and I was able to do it.
I don't know why, because I'm sitting here very quietly.
So with that case, Clive, your hand was next up after Shirley, so you go next.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, Andrew.
Hi, Clive.
Hello. So we originally wanted to create a broader service, but we haven't been able to achieve that yet. Is there any particular reason? And the other two councils that we help out on a occasional basis, do we actually make money for the service from helping them out, or do we not know if we make any money from that? Because I guess that is one of the original intentions.
Yeah, well, if I could take your second question first. So, I mean, the simple answer to that is yes. There's an income stream into Wokingham, and I should have said this by means of my introduction, but just so we're clear, Wokingham is the host authority, is the employer in this shared service. Right. So there is a direct benefit to Wokingham through the additional work that is delivered outside of the two key shared services partners. In terms of your first question, Clive, around why has it not expanded in terms of the shared service itself, the sort of the core partner, two partner authorities, why has that not become 3, 4, etc.? I think I would say it's not through want of trying, and we've certainly had a number of lengthy discussions, I would say, with other potential partner authorities, sort of relative near neighbours, certainly Berkshire I'm thinking of, over the years, and for various reasons those haven't come to fruition at this point in time. I wouldn't discount it in the future, and I think there is a question about, this is a broader question beyond the scope of what you're looking at tonight, but this sort of really big question about sort of all the unitaries in Berkshire, and particularly for sort of specialist type support services, why not a bigger shared support type service right across the piece, not just for audit, but for other services? But I think it's a complex or a complicated answer to your question, in the sense of there are various reasons why those discussions don't materialize into a tangible expansion of the service. Some of it is around perhaps politics, some of it is around timing, and it not being appropriate at a particular point in time. And hopefully for some of those potential partners, we just haven't reached the right time at the moment. But as I say, it's a complicated set of different reasons, not just one thing that has sort of hampered our progress in terms of that big sort of strategic objective that we had back in 2014.
Okay, so most of the employees are located in Wokingham then, are they?
It depends what you mean by located. That they predominantly, if we forget about the fact that obviously we've been predominantly based from home during the period of COVID, but in so-called sort of pre-COVID times or normal times, there would be presences certainly at Wokingham and certainly at Maidenhead to service those two partner authorities, but obviously also at the other councils that we provide services to as well.
Okay. Do you think that the service works efficiently?
I think if you're thinking in terms of sort of the productivity of individual auditors and the team as a whole, I would say we're very focused. I mean, it's a council provided service, but we try to employ the best sort of, I would say, sort of a commercial mindset to what we do. We need to be accountable not just to Wokingham's audit committee in terms of performance and productivity, but also to RBWM's audit and governance committee as well. And from a sort of partnership contractual point of view, we need to be very clear that we're delivering as efficiently as we possibly can do for the price, that the day rate that we're bringing in on the back of the services that we're providing.
Some of the other shared services that we have with other councils, there's been a few disputes as to where the costs should be apportioned and that sort of thing. Is there anything like this here with this shared audit and investigation service?
Yeah, I'm aware of what you refer to there, Clive. What I would say is I think that this service has been relatively straightforward in that sense. I think, you know, we've not had any disputes of any significance in terms of how costs get allocated. It is, I would say, quite transparent in terms of where we do the work and relating that back to the charges that are made.
Okay. All right. So, final question. I'm afraid it is a bit of a general one. Do you think that we have achieved the objectives that we set out to achieve 7 years ago?
I think I would say that we're in a stronger position than we were back in as Wokingham. I'm talking about here, a stronger position with a shared service in place, because I think certainly operationally we've achieved that greater resilience than what we had prior to 2014. I think, you know, we have got a wider pool of staff, obviously, on the back of this, and more access to specialist skills than we would have done with a much smaller team. But equally, you know, there is still a question about what is the optimal size. And yeah, I think there's a case that you could say, well, if we were in an even bigger shared service, then certainly some of those operational benefits would be greater than what we've been able to achieve to date. So there is I guess there's that, as you say, Clive, it's a general question, but sort of what's the optimal model when you're creating a shared service? Is it about just two partners, or is it about more than two?
So generally happy that we've achieved the objectives, but there might have been a few other things that we possibly could have done if we'd have been able to get other councils involved. Is that?
Yeah, that's my take on it at the moment. I mean, I would say this is a sort of snapshot in time in terms of where we are at the start of 2021.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I think, you know, we could always improve.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you, Clive. It's also important to note that when this shared service started, we were actually in the process of the changing over of the different internal audit processes. So, for example, one aspect that the council lost responsibility for was benefit fraud, which we used to do a lot of investigations of back in pre-2015. I think that transfer over happened. So the fact that we went to a shared service and we were able to concentrate on a lot more work, having previously had that responsibility that we did very well with when it came to benefit fraud investigations, which we were commended by the Department of Work and Pensions many times, was a benefit from that point of view as well. So there is also some timing and a bit of history and a bit more information in the background as well. First of all, welcome, Abdul, but I'm going to go to Paul first, if that's okay.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Andrew, as well for your presentation. You've actually answered a number of my questions in your responses to Clive, so I'll keep it fairly short. But thank you for the business case that you put in the documents. That was really useful background information from where you'd actually come from. So thank you for that. On page 34, 2.2, you mentioned about these other two local authorities. Is there a reason why they're not listed and the type of work the shared service is doing for them?
No, let me just say a little bit about them, because it's not a secret. So Bracknell is one of the authorities that we provide support to in terms of audit work. So we help the head of audit at Bracknell in terms of providing additional support to ensure that she can complete her plan. She's got a mixed economy in terms of how she delivers audit work at Bracknell, and that arrangement has been over a number of years now. So that's not a one-off arrangement. Similarly at Rushmore, the Hampshire District Council, we provide a smaller number of days there, it's true, but in fact that the days that they've taken from us has grown over a period of time, because I would say we've proved our sort of value, both in terms of the cost, the charge, but also in terms of the quality of what we can offer. And there is something, I guess, that I would say about this being a sort of public sector provided service, and then this is not me disparaging the private sector in any way here, but you know that is part of the sort of the niche, the USP, if you like, of having a shared service between two local authorities. And that, you know, certainly with those two other authorities that I talked about, that has helped us get our foot in the door and build a reputation with them.
Thank you for that. You've partly answered my next question, actually, because you mentioned in your briefing at the beginning about working with other unitaries within Berkshire. So one of my questions was, have you actually looked for business outside of the Berkshire unitaries? And you've partly answered that with you're doing work for Rushmore, but are you looking to try and get some particular full support there, similar to, you know, Bracknell on a totally ongoing basis with other authorities outside of the Berkshire unitaries?
Yeah, I mean, we've had as I said in my introduction, sort of any leads that come to us in whatever way, we've certainly pursued, and you know that's how we develop that relationship with Rushmore, for example. And we would certainly be open to sort of any lead that came our way in that sense. We've done a lot of thinking certainly over the years about what is our market, and where should we be using our sort of really scarce resources in terms of winning new business. What I would say on this, and again I'll be interested in sort of the committee's views, is COVID in one sense makes us think perhaps differently about the potential market. So yeah, we've proved over the last 9-10 months that actually we can continue to deliver effective internal audit services even remotely, through Teams, through remote access to systems, etc., both across the two partner authorities and the other two authorities as well. So it does open up our thinking in terms of geographically. So some of the perhaps constraints that we had in our minds previously about, you know, where would the auditor be based, and travelling costs and all of that. I think it gives us some new scope in terms of our thinking for the future.
So just on the back of that, do you go looking for business at other authorities? So you're touting for business, or do you wait for the phone to ring at your end?
I think it's probably fair to say we've done both. Certainly in the earlier days, it was more, I would say, chasing some new business and pursuing and proactively pursuing the conversations, particularly in Berkshire. I think more latterly it's been somewhat more opportunistic, as those opportunities have come to us. So it's been a bit of both. I guess one of the points perhaps for the committee to consider, not specifically necessarily about this shared service, but more broadly, is the whole sort of concept of investor save. Obviously, from a sort of commercial point of view, to win new business, you've got to invest in the time and the cost of actually bidding and tendering and promoting what you've got to offer. And you know, that's always a sort of a difficult balance to get right. You know, we don't have staff who are dedicated to marketing or promoting or selling the service.
Thank you, Andrew. I've just got one more, if I may. On page 35, you've got an acronym, LGAN. What does that mean?
Page 35.
35, LGAN. It could mean a number of things. Local government audit something, or
I'm sure the LG is local government. I'll need to confirm that to you. Apologies. I don't want to guess at it. I could guess, but I suspect the N is network as well. But I'll confirm that.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't find it anywhere else, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Abdul, have you got any questions on this?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. I apologize for joining you guys late. Due to this, we had a meeting with other two local authorities, what we're talking about now, on the licensing training. So that's where I was, so apology for the delays. Andrew, you mentioned about you want our opinion. 7 years ago, yes, we did enter into a partnership, but in my opinion, being in this council for such a long time, I reckon after 3 years, we were doing more work than what other people are doing in other two councils. So in other words, my opinion is to come out of the shared service if we can do it in-house. That's one. Secondly, I would like you to comment on, it's about 440,000 people, they're covering all that in the shared service. It's not logical anymore to stay on board. And I know Wokingham is doing a massive amount of job throughout this, and we are not getting anything back. Our taxpayers, council taxpayers, they want money for value for money. And if we can save any penny in this pandemic situation, I would prefer that we come out, and I would like to know what we need to do in order to come out of this. Sorry?
Abdul, I was going to say this is about internal audit. Yeah.
Okay, well, I thought he wants some comments, so I probably not. You're right. So, okay, in that case, I'll stop then.
I just wanted to make sure, because you've just come from licensing and I know what you're referring to there, which I think will come to further. The internal audit team's a little bit different here. Andrew, do you want to just comment on some of the things that internal audit have done if you missed the beginning of it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, that particularly for you, Abdul, that when we started in 2014, and bearing in mind that internal audit is quite a specialist, quite a niche area, it is quite difficult, even in today's market, it's quite difficult to attract and retain good internal auditors. So it's quite a competitive market, and both at Wokingham and at Windsor and Maidenhead in the lead up to 2014, both authorities were really struggling with very small teams where any absence or any vacancy was really noticeable, and it had a sort of direct impact in terms of the council's sort of reputation around governance and its ability to get the right levels of assurance that it needed with regard to how its sort of financial and other controls were operating. So it was really a question about scale back then, and it felt like we weren't large enough. We didn't have a sufficiently sort of large core or pool of auditors. I mean, I do understand that. I think it's always a fair question, and I think we should, as a council, continually be reviewing the models that we've got and asking ourselves whether the reasons that we set something up in the first place are still valid, and are there better models, different models that would benefit the Wokingham taxpayer. So I totally accept that point, Abdul. But I guess what I would say is that for this particular service, we would, if we were to go back to a purely in-house service, we'd need to think really carefully about how we would guard against the risks that existed. The reasons we set up the shared service in the first place, how we would mitigate those risks should we go back to or change the delivery model in the future. But as I say, I think it's always good, and it's a sign, I think, of a healthy organisation that it constantly sort of reviews what it's done and doesn't sit on its laurels.
Thank you, Andrew, and I'll stop on that. It's audit, you're right. Thank you.
No worries, Abdul. You just come from licensing, so it was understandable. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Most of my questions got asked as well. Most of my aspect has been from recollection as well, due to my previously chairing the audit committee some years ago. But in terms of looking at this going forward, I think it would be good to effectively look at some examples about what the internal audit investigation team have been doing, what some findings, some understanding, and basically get someone from the internal audit team here as well, just to explain a bit more about what they do, because not all members have benefited from sitting on the audit committee, because it is different from overview and scrutiny, because it's very much a looking over what the council has been doing and making sure that we are legally compliant, I think, is the simplest way of describing it. So it's very much a different mindset and a different mentality. It's very much a case of, have we done this? Have we done this? So things like an example of the internal audit team that always springs to mind is the risk register. The risk register always goes to audit, and it's that team that investigates it. So things like that would be very useful for the committee to understand more about what it's doing and effectively understand how the relationship is with with the Royal Borough, and effectively how it is linking together. Because one aspect that I seem to recall was when this shared services was set up, there was concerns about the differing technologies and software that were being used as well, because it was different. Effectively, it was different metrics. So we were recording one set of data in Celsius and the other half in Fahrenheit. So it would be useful to know how that gap has narrowed as well, due to the shared services and that general practice as well. It would also be good to hear, I don't know if this is possible, basically some of the feedback from and examples of the external work that they've been doing that have basically been a feather in the cap, because I remember the internal audit team were always very proud of the external work that they did do, because it allowed them to not only generate some revenue for the council, but also it was honing their own skills, because it was doing something from outside of the borough's perspective, and it was something quite often usually a bit different, something that we hadn't done in a while, and it enabled them to do training, and basically enabled us to retain people a lot better. So it'd be good to hear about things like that as well.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to come back, and the head of audit would have been here tonight, but she sends her apologies she wasn't able to make it, but I'm sure Catherine and maybe some of her team could give you some of those sort of real life examples, and you could hear directly from the staff in terms of what it means to work in a shared service as opposed to the pure in-house model.
Yeah, and that's what I think we need to know, because personally, the shared internal audit seems to have worked and worked really well, and I think it's a good example about what it's done. Things may have changed in the last 18 months, and with the pandemic, who knows? But it is very much I'd like to see and hear more, simply because if it's an example of good practice in work, how can we take what it's been done and replicate it? But audit's slightly different. Things like comparing auditors to planning, for example, is very different. Clive, your hand shot up.
Got one last question for you, Andrew. Is it possible for our internal audit people to do an investigation of the property investment group and have a look at where we have been investing and how much it's cost us to do the investing, and basically whether it does make money for us.
Well,
and if it is worth something to continue to do.
Well, what I would say to that, Clive, I guess strictly speaking, that's probably not something that feels sort of a question for that should come from the audit committee. But I guess the good news, Clive, is that question has already been asked by the audit committee, so they've given some direction that that's an area that they'd like to get assurance on. I was about to
say that I thought they'd already asked that question in like November time or something like that.
All right.
Yeah,
well, that's good.
It's good on the agenda, Clive.
Yeah, that the two committees are thinking along the same lines. That's positive, isn't it?
There traditionally was a meeting between the chairs of Overview and Scrutiny Management and the Audit Committee at the start of the municipal year to make sure there wasn't any crossovers. So I suspect that has continued, but I can't confirm that.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, Abdul, your hand's still up. I assume it's stuck. Yep. So thank you very much for that, Andrew. I think if members are in acquiescence to my suggestion earlier about basically getting the audit team here to basically talk around some of their examples, some of their findings, their own experiences, etc. I feel it will give us much more meat on the bones, especially now we've got this background where we understand the business case, the rationale, and the operational aspect of it. It's now we need to know the day-to-day business. So if we can ask that team to come back and a further report, so that we can do in much further detail and try and learn more about what they think's going well, how we think it's going on, etc. as well. So that way we can take what we're learning from audit and apply it to other shared services going forward. Because I may be biased because I was the chair of the audit when this was set up and it seemed to go well then. It seems to still be going well, and we need to learn and try and get other shared services which are not doing as well performance wise and value for money wise, and try and turn it around. That's the role of Overview and Scrutiny. So you're okay to take the way, Andrew?
Yeah, that's fine, Guy, and yeah, very very happy to do that. I'll come back sort of through you and Callum in terms of timing of that, but yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure the team would relish the opportunity to sort of share some of their examples there. So yeah, thanks for the offer.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I didn't ignore your note. I just had one of those days where I couldn't respond.
No worries.
And I know what it's like because this is the final half of the year and everything's being done up for the preparations for audit, etc., etc., etc. So ahead of audit, not being able to attend is fine.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I think that's it. So moving on to the next item agenda, which is that's gone. We're going on to the report on the Mtfp. So basically reviewing what's gone on for the last. When did we start it? September. For the budget review.
Yes, sometime around then.
Yeah.
Shall I take this, Chairman? Shall I just quickly?
Yeah, please. Let's start. Let's start. If you could start, Callum, because I know we've got a report to write, as it were.
Yeah. So, as you'll see, members, I've appended last year's report that the committee sent to council, and I think Guy spoke on briefly at council, if I remember. And that the recommendation is fairly simple. It's essentially asking. I've put some draft points in there, sort of that I've myself looked at via various sets of minutes. So the first recommendation is that members sort of offer comment on that and give input into what they like to see in their report. And then the second is essentially that you delegate the report itself to be written by officers and then agreed with the chairman. So if you look on page 68, I've set out a number of bullet points in there. Again, that's just from me looking through what members have commented at various committee meetings. I'm certain there are things in there that members want to add and things they want to word differently, but this really is just a starting point, and I just want to make very clear this is your report, and I'm happy for it to be written in any way that the committee wants, really. So I'll, with your permission, I'll hand it back to you there.
Thank you, Callum, and thank you for starting the ball rolling on this, because I know that last year we did have a very good report, and we'd like it to continue on that point of view. So, members, I'd like to get everyone's opinions and views on this. So, please do put your hands up. But I will be going around to everyone to ask their own opinions, regardless of if you put your hands up. So it's more a case of who wants to go first. Clive, as you're unmuted, I think you're going to go first now.
All right. That's fine. Well, generally, Guy, I think that it has gone pretty well again. I think we learned an awful lot last year, and we will continue to learn over the next few years how the correct way of doing overview and scrutiny of a budget is. I think that the officers have very much stepped up to the mark. They have been really good. They have answered the questions that all of us have been asking in a very professional and a very courteous way. And the really nice thing, I think, is that if they haven't been able to answer the question, they've always been happy to say, I will come back to you about that. I think that generally the executive members that have come before the committee have tried to approach it the same way that the officers have. But I think there might be one or two executive members who haven't quite embraced it and perhaps see it as a little bit of adversarial politics, which I don't think it has been. I think that things haven't been looked at politically at all. And I think that the questions that have come from all of the 6 or 7 councillors have actually been very good and generally pretty well thought through. And finally, I'd just say I think you have chaired it very well, Guy. Really well.
Thank you.
As you did last year.
I think one thing I'll add to that, Clive, is because of everything that's been going on in the past 12 months, I'm very grateful that we started this in 2019 as opposed to last year.
Probably, yes. Yeah.
But thank you for that, Clive.
Yeah. Okay.
And Callum, as mentioned at the start, please put down these as individual councillors' comments as well, because I think it's important that these are all recorded from our point of view.
Yeah.
Right, I should start rolling a dice to choose who's next. Does anyone want to go next?
Happy to go next.
Graham, you can go. You managed to get the camera on quickly.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about the little outage earlier, thanks to the internet going down, but I was only up briefly. No, I subscribe to everything that Clive just said, and it's good that these discussions have been held cordially from all parties, and that they have been done professionally is the word that I would use. I think Clive used that word too. And I think that the commendation should go to all parties. And I mean that not politically, I mean parties with a small p. The only thing I would say is that, we've got through a terrific amount of work. It feels to me like a terrific amount of work, but I'm still a new boy. And I wonder if actually what we have got through proportionately is greater or lesser than what would be expected. And I'll leave that judgment to the more experienced than me to comment on.
I will add this on, Graham. I think having it be virtual this past year, with it being on the PowerPoint and all the information on our computers in front of it, it was a little easier than the enormous amount of paper shuffling that we did the year before. Abdul, as you shot up next, go ahead.
Again, Chair, thank you very much, and thank you to all the officers. It's been terrific years, the way they have given us all the information we required very clearly and understandably, So again, just want to add, it has been non-political. That's the beauty of this scrutiny, is that we have said what we want to say it without any sort of, disturbance or anything. So thank you very much to everyone involved for your time as a chairing, and Callum, thank you for your support on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. Shirley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd obviously like to echo what everybody else has said in terms of thanks to the officers for their input. One small point I'd like to make, and that was something that I would have found useful, and maybe it could be taken forward, is that I've still got the document from the year before when we did this process.
Yep.
And so on occasion, when we were doing the process this year, I wanted to look back and make comparisons. And what I found was slightly difficult was a lot of things had the layout had changed, the way they were formatted had changed, and it was very difficult to compare.
Because if you remember, Shirley, we were yelling at them at points because of how terrible the formatting was.
Absolutely. And I felt the format in the previous year was far better. And I think, we need to, at the end of the day, you need to stick to the same. Otherwise, it's impossible to make comparisons from one year to the next. So that's just an observation that I think we need to perhaps make clear. There's a set format.
Consistency in format, I think, is a fair enough comment. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 months. I don't know if we don't know if personally, I don't think the elections are going to happen in May. I think they'll be pushed out a couple of months. We don't know when we're going to be meeting again in person. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think digitally we've done very well, and I'd like that what we've learned from it being digital to continue, because it was significantly easier, I think, to see things with it being with the PowerPoint presentation on the screen and talking through it, and then we had greater details in our packs as well. So we had information to hand, and then we can go into detail in the pack as well. So that worked. Last year, when we had, we all remember, we basically ended up having to move around the room and taking up entire tables to ourselves because of the amount of paper. I dread to think how many trees we dealt with on that, but yeah, consistency so we can compare it to each year is good. We also had it recorded this year, so we can actually go back and watch the videos if we're so inclined.
Yeah.
If we're so inclined.
Steady on there, guy.
Well, my daughter fell asleep on internal audit, so she clearly doesn't want to be an accountant.
I don't blame her either.
Okay.
Thanks.
Who am I missing? Let's go to Paul.
I put my hand up, so you're saying going down the line. I fully agree with what Clive has said at the beginning and other members. I think last year being our initial year, the authority has certainly undertaken scrutiny in a way where previously this type of work had not really been done with the financial side, as I understand it. And that was a huge improvement. I think officers and councillors, including the executive members, have learnt a lot from last year. And those improvements have been made this year, particularly with presenting of information and answering our questions. And from our point of view, as a committee, scrutinising them. And I think that's improved a lot as well from that last year. Virtual meetings, I think, have helped particularly with the presentation of detail and enabling everybody to get together. And as you already said, we've got everything electronically now, so I can put stuff on one screen here, and I can look at stuff and go back to information and notes and things like that. It has made it a lot easier. There are still improvements to be made, such as completing templates fully. So we do have all that information, but hopefully, you know, if we have this again and we run this again next year, it will be improved even further. But I think we've come an awful long way in 12 months from last year, and an incredible way from before that. So I think it's well done to all, and it's really well done to officers as well for bringing the information to us that we've been asking for. And it's a huge improvement in the way they've presented it. It's very good. So thank you.
And for once, Graham isn't here to take that praise. I agree, Paul. I think it, and I'll say this from the chair, that so long as I'm chair of this committee, I will fight for this process, because it is the whole point of looking at this overview and scrutiny aspect, and that's the reason why we've requested more meetings next year. Clive, I'm going to come to you after I've gone to Alison, as she's the last one to speak, I believe, other than myself.
Well, thank you, Guy. I have to say that probably everybody's covered anything that I would have said. I wasn't part of this committee from May, so I came in halfway, I think.
I think it was about halfway.
Later. Yes. But I've been very impressed by the way that everybody's worked together, presentations from the officers and the executive members, as has already been said. And just looking at the points that Callum put together, yeah, they all look very, very important parts of our final report.
Thank you, Alison. Clive, did you want to say something quickly, as your hand shot up again?
Yeah, but I think it might be a nice idea, Guy, if you dropped Graham an email and told him to go onto YouTube and listen from about 1 hour and 21 minutes.
I can do better than that. I can do that because I know how to timestamp things on YouTube.
But you can...
I'll do that. That's a good idea, Clive. I'll do that.
It actually might give him a smile, and he can share it with Bob and a few other people as well. So I think it would be good.
And they deserve and I really do believe they deserve the praise.
Yeah.
Because especially the circumstances in which all officers of the council found themselves in this past year, the fact that we have managed to not only review the budget in the time that we had in a different format, we have actually, Paul's right, it has improved dramatically since last year. Everyone's right, it's improved dramatically since last year. They not only delivered everything, and especially to the children's and adult socials and the adult services team, who have been put under immense pressure. The presentation and the detail that they presented was, I'll hold my hand up. I did not expect the level of detail from those teams, considering what was going on in the background in which we were asking them to deliver that information. So the sheer fact of the matter is that we've been able to scrutinize the budget in detail to a level that we are satisfied with, and everything that has gone on with it. And in addition, when this process started in September, there was, I'm sure we were all really worried with how the budget was looking. By the time we reached to December, it was actually in a lot better state than we all probably feared at the start of the process. The council is looking in significantly better financial shape than many of our neighbouring authorities and authorities across, and similar sized authorities across the country. And I think that's a testament not only to the work done by officers and executive members during the pandemic in basically keeping things under control, but also the fact that this committee had reviewed the budget last year and was reviewing the budget this year, that we knew what was going on in much greater detail than we would have had at any other opportunity, so that we were able to basically ask difficult questions and push back and amend things sufficiently that we have got flexibility and a much more stable financial footing going into the next 12 months going forward, I feel. Because without this oversight and scrutiny that we have done, both during the pandemic and even before it, there is a real risk that things would have spiraled out of control a lot sooner, like some of our compatriot authorities have done. And it really is a testament to everyone in this council, officers and members alike, both on this committee, off this committee, and everything, that we have got such a stable financial position as things stand. Now, whether that survives the next 12 months is open to debate.
Who knows?
But we can't. But none of us can predict that with what that happened. When we were sitting down and reviewing this document last January, we were all expecting it to go completely normally. 6 weeks later, everything had blown up.
Mm.
So that's my thinking. I think, and this committee firmly deserves a pat on the back for the work it has done. It has been done in a professional manner, and I'm very proud of what everyone has achieved here. Simply because and going back to what I said to Nigel and the burials earlier, this is what overview and scrutiny should be. This part of the budget process is definitely part of that, and I think we're actually approaching the pinnacle about what it should be, and the overview and scrutiny process is becoming significantly better as a result of it. That's my personal.
I just think we should send Graham a note and say to him, have a look at this from 1 hour 21 minutes, and he should be very pleased.
I'm going to put about 20:30 on my thing, so I can roughly work out what the time is on the scale.
Yeah, it's showing on mine that we've been going for 1 hour and 34 minutes now, and I think we started this sort of review at about 1 hour and 21.
Are you watching YouTube at the same time?
No.
Because I've got 1 hour 43.
All
right. Okay, that's I completely agree with that, Clive, and I'll write that note to Graham and the team as well. Okay. Callum, does that help?
Yes. Thank you for all those comments, and I'll be sure to pass them over to officers as well, as and when I speak to them. From hearing it, I'm taking it that members are happy for myself to write the report and then to get that agreed with Guy, and then obviously I will send that round once Guy has agreed it. I will send it round to committee members before it goes in the council agenda, just to make sure that there's nothing that me and him have missed.
Yeah, this is for February council. We're definitely
it's not going. It's no time for Thursday.
That's fine. I've got no objection to that. If other members have got objection, say so now. Forever hold your peace. Silence.
That's okay.
Silence. So yeah, Callum, if we can work on that, and feel free to give me a ring if you've got any questions and or guidance in that regard.
Thank you, Guy.
No worries. Okay, so once again, members, thank you very much for everyone who's participated in this, whether they're on the committee or not. I think we need to put everyone down who is. We'll have to go through and check who's attended these meetings, so we can put not only current committee members but also former committee members and members who attended as guests as well, because it's a lot bigger than just us as well. So moving on to the final item tonight, I believe, which is basically looking at the forward programme. So we've got two more meetings. Oh, I strike again, Mr. Extraordinary Meeting. We have an extraordinary meeting on the 22nd of February, and then we have the 29th of March as well. Looking at the 22nd of February, we're looking at flood risk management. which, considering what the meteorological my friends in the Met Office have looked at have been looking at face-wise for the last few days, I think we need to look at that quite urgently again. And also, we got Andrew coming again for the May 2021 elections update. Personally, I don't think it's going to be the May 2021 elections update. I think it's going to be a 2021 elections update going forward in February. Does anyone have any comment on that at all?
Shall I just jump in here very quickly, Guy?
Yep, sure.
So exactly as you say, so flood risk management, it will be about a year since the committee's had that update, so it's a good time for that to come back. It will actually be Anne Hunter who will be presenting the elections update, only because Andrew is double booked for that evening, but Anne is the deputy, one of the deputy returning officers, so she'll be able to cover that one for you. And then moving on to March, I've had confirmation, so members may notice that as things stand, as Guy obviously said, elections are due, and therefore that will be the first day of PERDA. So I have had confirmation, I have spoken with Andrew, that one item should be good to go in there, because the updates you will be receiving will be from the operational side of things rather than from anyone like the PCC. So it will be purely operational. Obviously, we may need to take advice if things change, but I will be making it clear to both the fire and police that keep it operational, and policy isn't to be discussed. We're looking at statistics, and it's a bit like how members looked at it last time around. But I've had confirmation that both Felicity Parker from the police, she'll be coming along. Trevor Ferguson from the fire isn't available that night, but we do have the area manager for response and resilience, and we also have the central hub manager who have confirmed for that date.
And it's going to be virtual anyway, so yeah, they get to attend without uniform for a change, unless they choose to wear it at home. Okay, does any members have any comments on that? The 29th, we are very much limited in our agenda because of the PERDA thing. And I seem to recall a couple of years ago, we ended up with the fire and police meeting just before PERDA or on PERDA itself, which just happened to be a coincidence. Alison.
Well, if we hear in January or February that the elections are being postponed, and we won't be going into PERDA, will we? So
yeah, it's moot if that happens.
Is that being new to this committee? Is that a full agenda then? Just having that item on there in March?
I think it's more of a case of normally there would be a bit more. It would be the issue is because of PERDA, I suspect, and also due to things being shuffled around. Normally there would be another item on there as well. Neil, I'm going to come into you. And
could I just ask the guy then? Is that not unfortunate planning to put that meeting into PERDA, whereas if it had been a week before, it wouldn't have been?
It wouldn't be, Alison, because we set the diary last year. I believe this year was meant to be the fallow year for us.
That is correct, Chairman.
So it wouldn't have been PERDA last year. Sorry, when the diary was set, it wouldn't have been PERDA because we wouldn't have had any elections this year.
Yes, yeah, completely. Thank you.
Neil, you had your hand up quickly because I assume it was a point.
Just to say, Guy, that tomorrow night the management committee is starting the process for looking at next year's work programme. So if members have any burning issues, no pun intended, then they might want to feed them into you or to feed them into me or Callum, just so we can start to build some items to consider in next year.
Yep, I've forgotten about that one actually. So yes, if members have got anything, as Neil said, feed them into myself, Neil or Callum. Shirley.
Yeah, well, on that very subject, Guy, I noticed at the end of the very end of the minutes of the November meeting, it had said that we would perhaps have the Bain Forum coming back to scrutiny sometime in March, I think it said. But it occurs to me that they probably haven't been, because of COVID, they probably haven't actually put into practice any of the ideas that were talked about at the meeting in November. So maybe that's something that could be brought up much later in the year. And I don't know. The other thing that today I was I was looking up to see if I could find any mental health first aid courses, and that the search for that led me to the Wokingham Borough Health and Wellbeing Board, and I read all sorts of minutes and all sorts of plans from that particular board, with all kinds of action plans for doing this and doing that, going right back to 2014. And I thought, would that be something that we would scrutinise, or would that come under the auspices of a different scrutiny?
That would be, yeah, that would be the health. That would be basically the health overview and scrutiny committee.
Yeah, right. Okay. I just wondered,
health, well-being, and health are.
Yeah. I guess that would be the case.
Is that you who chair that now, or I can't remember?
That's Ken.
Ken chairs it.
Ah, right. Okay. Fair enough. I just sort of thought about it, and I thought, well, I wonder who, when they were last scrutinised, or how the things work.
Yeah. Mental health has come up. Wow, I went very northern there. Mental health has come up quite a few times. I think, Clive, we both sit on that committee together. Did we discuss that last time, or was it just the hospital? I honestly can't remember now. Everything's blurring into a mess for me.
We had a joint meeting, Children's Services. Do you remember?
That was it.
Yes, we did.
It was the joint meeting.
Yes.
It was the joint meeting. That was it.
Because we were looking at more about young people and a lot of the issues around them. One of the things that was raised, we were told that actually that was Public Health England more than the council. So we have invited them to come to a future meeting to give us more information.
I think Alison, if you can let Shirley know when they're coming.
I'd be interested to hear about that. Yeah, it was mainly that somebody had asked about this training, and it came up. Almost every plan for that since 2014 had said that there would be mental health first aid training offered, but I couldn't find any examples of it being offered, if you see what I mean. It was in the plan, but I don't know whether it had ever come to fruition as such, or whether people were being directed to outside organisations. So it was just a kind of, I was musing on it this afternoon, and it was timely that this has come up now. So
no, fair point.
I know Jake Morrison's and the CA have been offering that, and I think that's in partnership with the council.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Shirley. Callum?
It was only to mention, Alison made the comment about the March meeting obviously being a bit sparse. The only reason sort of I've persisted with trying to get the police and fire to come along is because of COVID. When it happened last time, they were due to come in March of 2020. And we had to cancel that meeting then, so it would have been. We haven't had them for
2 years
exactly. So, I mean, it's completely up to the committee. If that's not, if you don't feel there's enough business, then we can rearrange it for sometime next year. But it would be the second time we've cancelled on them. Yeah,
I don't think we should cancel on them again. I firmly believe that we should have this meeting, even because it's an important aspect, and we also, I think, need to learn about what has gone on from the police and fire in the last 12 months from the COVID issue, because their priorities will have changed slightly. Alison, your hands up.
I was thinking about the corporate and community. Is looking at the arts and culture strategy part of this committee's remit?
Probably.
It definitely is, Alison. It is in the I believe it's in. It was in the work programme for this year, but just due to everything else going on, it was something that members didn't get round to look at this year. But it is in the work programme.
I think that might be one for the new municipal year if things get back to a bit more of normality.
So that
if we're not in Purda, we could look at it in March perhaps. But I obviously, if we're in Purda, we can't.
It also depends if we're still in lockdown, because I don't know how many officers have still been redeployed to everything.
I believe that it is being finalised.
If it's being finalised, then I've got no objection. I've got no objection to it coming to March then, because we're talking 2 months away. But if we're in Purda, we can't do it. So it all depends on what. Basically, we will have to look at it on the 22nd of February and see what the call's being made. in regards to the elections.
Well, they're saying that, Guy. I mean, we shouldn't wait till something's finalised. I mean, we should be
my point
looking
is,
at policy while it's being
in,
made and having our input to it.
I was referring to the elections being finalised.
Oh yes, yeah. Well.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no objection to put it in for March, and if we need to scrub it, we need to scrub it. If members are inclined to agree with that. Shirley?
Yeah, could I just ask, I'm on the Arts and Cultural Alliance, as we now call ourselves. We were the working group. So would that mean I would have just, because this has not propped up before, would I have to not be involved in the scrutiny process?
I think it would only be a pecuniary declared interest if that was the case, Shirley. So you would be able to participate but not vote if we took any motion.
I'd have to.
But I think it would be very difficult for me to
because you're marking your own homework.
Exactly right. Yeah, I'd be sort of poacher and gamekeeper at the same time, which could be quite a tricky one to juggle. So I just thought
that's definitely one to check.
Yeah, I'd have to double check that one. But yes, that might be right, Shirley. But it could be that you participate not as a committee member, but as potentially if a couple of the members of the working group, for example, were invited along to the discussions, it could be something like that. But I will check that for you.
Yeah,
is that similar to when we talk about anything related to children's services and Graham sort of takes the back seat?
Yes, that's probably actually a good point. Yeah, I suspect that would be the way forward. Okay, so can we put the arts thing in for the 29th, Callum? That gives us a bit more meat to that agenda. Not that the police and fire services update is going to be a small item.
So do you want me to contact officers, Chairman? But
yes,
obviously just preface it with, this is subject to, this is just, a contingency in case Purda is scrapped, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. If I can give them some dates to work with, at least they can sort of have an idea of what needs to happen if they are coming.
Yep, indeed. Okay. Right, I think we are done for the evening, unless anyone's got any final things on the agenda for going forward. I'm not seeing any hands, so right, thank you very much, everyone. I will draw the meeting to a close at 10 to 9 according to my watch. So thank you very much for attending, everyone. For those who are watching, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it interesting, and see everyone, well, on on Thursday for full council.
Of course.
Thank you
Guy.
very much, Guy.
Thank
you
you
very much,
guys.
Have a very good evening.